it's Kim. So this is going to be the just a general overview of Genesis chapters 13 through 15. I didn't have time to do much over the weekend. We have a little dog, and she's actually in the hospital right now with kidney infection and some other stuff. But she's also 16 and a half, so it's kind of par for the course when you have an elderly dog. But anyway, um, I asked ChatGPT just to do 1,000 word overview of Genesis 13 to 15. I suggest that people go and actually read it, the entire thing for themselves. But it says Genesis 13 to 15 focuses on Abram's continuing journey of faith after leaving Egypt, his growing role as a man of covenant, and God's increasingly detailed promise to him. These chapters present critical themes of land, faith, trust, and God's covenant making, setting the foundation for the rest of the Abraham narrative. Chapter 13, Abraham and Lot separate and then return to Canaan. After leaving Egypt, Abram returns to the Negev with his wife Sarai, nephew Lot, and all their possessions. He is now very wealthy in livestock, silver, and gold. Abram retraces his steps back to Bethel and Ai, that's how I pronounce it, where he had previously built an altar and calls on the name of the Lord. This signals a spiritual reset after the episode in Egypt, where his fear led to deception, where he told Sarai to say that she was his sister. Conflict between Abram and Lot. Abram and Lot both have large flocks and herds, and their possessions became so great that the land cannot support them living together. Quarreling arises between their herdsmen. To prevent conflict, Abram generously offers Lot the first choice of land, saying, "Let there be no strife between you and me, for we are kinsmen." In Lot's choice, Lot lifts his eyes and sees the well watered Jordan Valley like the garden of the Lord. He chooses this region for himself, settling near Sodom, a city known for its wickedness. This decision foreshadows trouble for Lot later in Genesis. Ugh, yeah, chapter 19 gets a little. I think that's chapter 19 at the very end of the chapter. Ew. Okay. God's renewed promise. After Lot departs, God reaffirms his promise to Abram. All the land that Abram sees will belong to him and his offspring forever. God commands him to walk through the land, symbolically taking possession of it. Abram settles by the oaks of Mamre in Hebron and builds an altar to the Lord. So, chapter 14, Abram rescues Lot, the War of the Kings. This chapter introduces the first recorded war in the Bible. Four Eastern kings led by, I say, Chedorlaomer. I don't know, or Chedorlaomer. Who knows? There's different ways you could probably, but it's probably starting like the CH sounds like a K, so Chedorlaomer here. Waged war against five kings of the Jordan Valley, including the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah. The Eastern Coalition defeats the local kings and carries off spoils, including Lot and his possessions. Abram's rescue mission. When Abram hears that Lot has been taken captive, he gathers 318 trained men from his household and allies with neighboring leaders. They pursue the enemy as far as Dan and launch a nighttime attack, defeating them and recovering all the captives and goods. Encounter with Melchizedek, either one. Upon Abram's return, two kings come to meet him. King of Sodom offers Abram the goods in exchange for the people, and Melchizedek, king of Salem, brings bread and wine, blesses Abram, and blesses God Most High for giving him victory. Abram gives Melchizedek a tenth of all he has recovered, a gesture often seen as foreshadowing the priesthood and even the Eucharist in Christian interpretation. Abram refuses the king of Sodom's offer, lest anyone should say that the king made Abram rich. Abram's trust remains in God as his provider. Chapter 15, God's covenant with Abram. God's assurance. The chapter opens with God speaking to Abram in a vision. "Fear not, Abram, I am your shield. Your reward shall be very great." Abram voices his concern that he remains childless, and a servant, Eliezer, Eliezer or whatever of Damascus will inherit his estate. God assures Abram, telling him that his very own son will be his heir. He brings Abram outside to look at the stars. So shall your offspring be. Abram believes God, and this faith is counted to him as righteousness, a key theological statement that later becomes central in New Testament writings, Romans 4 and then Galatians 3. Covenant ritual. God then formalizes his promise through a covenant ritual. Abram is instructed to bring specific animals, cut them in half, and lay them opposite each other. Abram falls into a deep sleep, and a dreadful darkness follows upon him. God foretells that Abram's descendants will be sojourners in a foreign land for 400 years, afflicted, but eventually brought out with great possessions. The land from the river of Egypt to the Euphrates is promised to Abram's offspring. The theophany, a smoking fire pit and flaming torch, symbols of God's presence, pass between the pieces of the sacrificed animals. This signifies that God is binding himself to the covenant, taking upon himself the penalty should the promise not be fulfilled. This unilateral act underscores that the covenant depends on God's faithfulness, not Abram's performance. Themes across Genesis 13 through 15. Faith and trust in God. Abram's journey shows growth, excuse me. He returns to worship, trusts God's provision over Lot's choice, and believes God's promise despite barrenness. Generosity and peacemaking. Abram models humility by letting Lot choose the land first, prioritizing peace over personal gain. Divine protection and victory. Abram's success is highlights rescuing Lot highlights God's favor and protection over his chosen servant. God's covenant faithfulness. Chapter 15 is a high point, showing God's commitment to his promises and setting the theological foundation for salvation by faith. A foreshadowing, redemption. The covenant ritual points towards or forward to God's ultimate act of redemption through sacrifice. Conclusion, Genesis 13 through 15 deepens the portrait of Abram as a man of faith and introduces God's formal covenant with him. These chapters highlight Abram's dependence on God, God's repeated confirmation of his promises, and the importance of faith as a basis of righteousness. They set the stage for the coming tests of Abram's trust in God's plan, including the future birth of Isaac and the challenges surrounding Ishmael. And then as far as this, so Abram and Lot separate. Abram rescues Lot and meets Melchizedek, and then covenant with Abram. Anyway, so that's it. Let's see. Now let's create a matching infographic. Okay, yeah. So just want to make sure. Okay. And then I'll put in here yes, and then I'll go over that tomorrow. I'm going to see if I can find some stuff on the Charlie Kirk Memorial. Whatever. If you watch it, you don't watch it. I thought it was very touching about his wife saying that she actually forgave the murderer. I don't think I could do it, but kudos to her that she's able to put her personal feelings aside, but I'm sure that has to do with her faith in God. And the reason I started doing this series is just because I feel like I need to get back into the Word of God myself. I should have been doing it all this time, but I've failed. So I'm admitting it. But anyway, I will talk to you guys later, and y'all have a good afternoon. See ya. Bye.